Now in this video that I've entitled SQL Server Basics, I just want to kind of get you oriented to the world of SQL Server. And this video is especially for those of you who are new to this, or you've only been working with SQL Server, say, for the last couple of years. Because there's a lot of times out there that you can work on something and you just never really quite understand what it is or where it came from. And then there's an even better aspect of this. A lot of times in the database world, you find yourself working with people who have been working with something for quite a while, and then, kind of there you are. And you don't know how to pronounce the words, and you don't really know anything about the old days. And if you've ever been around IT very much, like any industry, it's like the longer you've been around, somehow you've paid your dues, and you're trusted more, everything's just life's better. So I want to give you some SQL Server basics and kind of catch you up if you're new to this. First of all, SQL Server is a fully relational database. Now you call it RDBMS, a relational database model system. And that just has to do with how the data is built and how it relates to each other in the tables and so forth. We'll actually get into that a little bit more as we go through here. This is a server product. SQL Server is designed to run on a separate database in the server room, and everybody connects to it remotely. And they do this through various client tools, and then most of the time a user is going to connect to SQL Server without even realizing they connected to SQL Server, because our developers are going to develop programs, and these programs, when the user fills out forms and clicks on things or chooses drop downs, it's either going to make a call out to SQL Server, grab some information and present it, or it's going to take whatever the user has given them and write it into the database. And so usually the SQL Server sits back there and applications use it. Now it's going to be the administrator's job for SQL Server to keep an eye on that server and make sure that we have enough disk space, make sure that our database is healthy, make sure that our tables are constructed properly for the most efficient utilization, and that the database is running fast, there's not a lot of locks, and we have, of course, the all-important security, we have permissions and users and all that locked down. And so there's a lot to come on here, but understand it's a server product. Now this is a big one right here. You should pronounce this SQL Server, not SQL. If you call this SQL Server, you're immediately flagging everybody in the room that I haven't been around very long. This is my first day on the job, and I brought a shiny apple with me, and my mom brought me some new underwear to wear today. So you don't want to appear like that new kid in the first grade thing. This was originally a product called SQL that was spelled out, and that's why it's called SQL. There was a lawsuit when Microsoft started working with it. You can go chase this stuff down the internet. Anyway, as part of the settlement on the lawsuit on copyright infringement, Microsoft just dropped the vowels from this, and it became SQL, but everybody still calls it SQL. Now, some things you need to know about SQL Server. You have virtually unlimited data storage. Now, I say virtually unlimited because you do have an upper limit, and it's 524,272 terabytes per database. Now, 500,000 terabytes is a vastly incredible piece of data. As a human being, you cannot imagine how big that is. For the most part, unlimited data storage, and the best way to think about this is you're only limited by your checkbook, because based on the storage system that you can put back there to maintain this data. Now, right out of the box, when you install SQL Server, you can theoretically connect up to 32,767 users at the same time to this database. Now, obviously, to do that, again, you've got to get out that checkbook, because you're going to have to spend quite an amount of money on the disk subsystem, on the RAM, on the processors on the machines themselves to connect 32,000 people. But as far as SQL is concerned, you can do that. Now, you can have up to 32,767 databases on a server. Probably not a good idea. And you can have over 2 billion tables in a database. So you should be able to store your data without a problem here. In each table, and if you're not familiar what a table is, we'll get to it later, you can have up to 1,024 columns. Before I end this video, I want to go through some history for you here so that you'll understand where this came from. Way back in 1989, Microsoft and Sybase and IBM and a bunch of people started working with databases. Ashton Tate came out with this really cool product called DBase, and it set the world on fire. And so the first version, if you will, of SQL Server that we can see was around 1989. It was built for the OS/2 operating system. Around 1993, 4.21 SQL Server came out, and this is back when Microsoft and IBM were both working on OS/2 together, and then they got into a fight about something, and they split ways, and it became WinNT for Microsoft, OS/2 for IBM. Microsoft released 6.0 in 1995. It was okay. It was an okay database. It was very hard to use. 6.5, it kind of grew up a little bit in 1996, and then the magic happened for Microsoft in 1998. SQL 7.0 was where Microsoft went back to the drawing board and said, hey, wait a minute. Knowing what we know now, how should we have built this thing to start with? They totally re-engineered it. It was like an 85% code rewrite. This introduced the OLAP, Online Analytical Processing, or data warehousing tools, and SQL began to take off. SQL 2000, or version 8.0, was released in 2000, and SQL continued to grow up and mature. In 2005, SQL Server 2005 was released. Microsoft reads this as SQL 9.0, and again, more functionality, more stability, more capacity for a lot of different situations. And then version 10.0 is what we're looking at now, and that is SQL Server 2008. We continue to get more data types to reflect the kind of data that we store and utilize now. So we've stepped up through here. Obviously, the product has matured and evolved quite a bit, but I just wanted to see where it came from, and so you can kind of understand the various versions back there. Now, kind of the line in the sand here, if you will, is right here at 7.0. Everything after 7.0 tends to be fairly backward compatible. Prior to 7.0, you've kind of moved into a different realm, and you need to get out of that. That's some SQL Server Basics. I hope it'll help you kind of talk around the water cooler at break.